Have you ever fallen victim to a job search scam?
I'm actually really surprised that I haven't. Anybody who knows me
Gullible.
knows that I am full on gullible.
Please don't scam
Please
her.
don't target me.
Hi, I'm Gina.
And I'm Jen.
And this is Job Search Stories. You're constantly leaving us comments and we get overwhelmed. So we wanted to just help you out in this episode about all kinds of scams and controversies. So I'm messy, so I'm really excited for this. Okay.
Scams have been prevalent for a while, and it's really interesting to see how involved and kind of elaborate some scams are. But again, that's like not the only controversy we're talking about today, right? There's just so much involved in the job search.
I think you can be a great help for people and give them some tips so they can kind of avoid maybe some companies or employers, or also find a way to just figure out how to avoid certain things.
I'm going to try my best.
I think we both are this, but just because they weren't expecting it. Personality hires. Good thing or bad thing?
I wouldn't want to be hired strictly for my personality. I don't know that that's a good thing.
It's not a good thing if that's what you were hired for. It's a great thing if you were hired, you do the job well, and then you're like, oh, everybody loves my personality.
Yeah, bonus, a person has a great personality, right? I love if somebody's like, Jen, you're so smart, such a great career coach, and you're just such a great person to be around.
Yeah.
Who wouldn't want to be a well-rounded individual in that way?
Yeah, a pleasant person to be around. But I think that that can sometimes be off-putting or weird if that's the only reason you've been hired. So what does it mean when someone is hiring for a cultural fit?
Right. So hiring somebody who's a culture fit essentially means you're just trying to find somebody who fits well into a company or into a team dynamic rather than looking at their skill set, right? And so it's not necessarily surprising why some companies have done this, because there has been a correlation between a team that works really well. They might be able to work more efficiently and be more productive, which ultimately leads to the company doing better. But what you might also find is that if you're hiring just because of personality, you're ignoring some job seekers and candidates who have some really strong skills and who could add value to a team.
Why would it be considered controversial for someone to be hired as a cultural fit?
It could be disclosure, could sometimes also be discriminatory. I think the real question that we should be asking is, when we hire for culture fit, are we even perpetuating bias? And there's actually a really great Forbes article on this topic. And what they call out is that when we favor people who look like us or have had backgrounds similar to us, that's called an affinity bias. And so what happens is, if you're constantly hiring people who are just like you or think like you end up with a lack of diversity. And that could happen within the team or within the company if it's done at a larger scale. And so you're really limiting the perspectives that are being had within the team. And that could actually stunt growth and innovation.
You're finding people that are similar to you, people that are like you, people that you basically like to get a drink with after work. And that's who you're choosing to be your coworker or somebody on your team. And that's not really fair, because everybody deserves a job. Everybody deserves a chance.
Yeah.
Okay. You're a job seeker. You're in an interview. What do you do if you feel like your employer or your prospective employer is leaning too much on your personality and whether you'd be a good fit on the team and not really focusing on your skills or the value that you could bring?
In an interview, you want a conversation to flow, right? You want to feel like they're really engaged and you want to make that connection. However, if you feel like a lot of the conversation is just about how you seem like you'd be a good team player or like you'd be just a great fit for the team, but you notice they haven't really asked you a lot about your skill set, that's the opportunity for you to contribute that on your own. Talk about your qualifications and even align how your values connect to the company's core values. So it's not just about the team that you're, potentially going to be working with. It's about the organization at large.
It's all about that redirect. But I feel like that would probably be hard for me because I'm so nervous and so docile. But I think that's a great tip for any job seeker who kind of wants to avoid being a personality hire and really wants to highlight their skills. Switching gears a little bit, there are some other controversies. I feel like this one is very, very common for a lot of people in a lot of different job markets, and that's job search scams. Have you ever fallen, victim to a job search scam?
I'm actually really surprised that I haven't, because anybody who knows me
Gullible.
knows that I am full on gullible. I will give out my information to just about anybody. And having said that, please don't target me.
Please don't scam
Please don't
her.
target me. But I'm not the only one. There's actually a recent stat from the Better Business Bureau that shows that an estimated 14 million people are exposed to employment scams every year, with 2 billion in direct losses annually. It's huge. People be getting scammed.
I've seen a lot of that on social media.
Social media is a hotbed for employment scams right now.
I did not know that, but I know you'll share some little tidbits with me. So my first question for you are, what are some of the newest job scams that you've heard about?
I think one of the ones that came out and has become more prevalent since the pandemic are work from home scams. So you might be contacted about an opportunity, work from home, sounds great, but then they're telling you you have to buy your own supplies or you have to pay for specific certifications. Red flag right away is if you have to pay to do a job, that's more than likely going to be a scam. This can also include what they call reshipping and reselling scams. So they might tell you to purchase some items at a low cost and then you can sell them at a higher cost. Be aware of anything where you're being told that you need to purchase things with your own funds. There's also what they call nanny, caregiver, and virtual personal assistant scams, where essentially they can tell you to deposit a check. You can keep a portion of that check and then you send them some money, but it's a fraudulent check. And so you end up being out in the end. I think one of the last important ones to focus on are job recruitment scams or job service recruitment scams, where essentially a headhunter might reach out to you and say that they're willing to help you find a job if you're unemployed or if you're looking for something new, but you have to pay them a lot of money for their services. And I know that can be really tricky because a lot of people have heard about working with recruiters, but typically what happens is you don't pay a recruiter or a recruiting firm up front. Their commission comes out from your contract once you're hired.
That last one, you could easily be swayed to be like, oh, this person wants to help me get my next job. Of course, I'm going to give them money.
Or if you've been unemployed for a really long time. I see stories all the time from people who have applied for hundreds of jobs, haven't found anything yet. We talk about burnout and the importance of it. Sometimes people reach a point of desperation in their job search.
Yeah.
And so that can really lead them to falling for one of these scams because they're really just looking for relief.
Desperate times call for desperate measures. How can you spot a job scam?
If somebody approaches you with an opportunity, but you have to pay for it, that's typically a red flag right there. Anything that involves checks, you having to deposit something and then send money to them, any type of wire transfers, that is more than likely the sign of a scam. If you're being reached out to about jobs with super vague job descriptions to where you're like, I don't even know what I'm supposed to be doing. I know we talked about AI written job descriptions, but these might be ones that are riddled with grammatical errors. And that's typically a red flag in, identifying any other kind of scam, right? If their contact is only via social media, we talked about that earlier, that could be a red flag. If the job is offered to you way too quickly, you apply for it, you don't even have to interview, they offer it to you right away, chances are it's not legitimate. If it's too good to be true, it probably is.
Yeah. So basically, got to be on high alert in order to protect yourself, which honestly, that's my next question.
Yeah.
What are the best ways to protect yourself from these job scams?
Sometimes a simple internet search can really help you. Something as easy as searching employer name and scam. That can show you if there have been a lot of reports of, scams happening. Also looking at the details of the job and who you're being contacted by. So let's say it's for a really prominent company, but the email is coming from a personal email address. If you're being reached out to by a company, it's going to be coming from that company's alias. So that's something that you should definitely look out for. You don't want to respond to emails or text messages or phone calls from people that you weren't necessarily expecting to hear from. So if you're getting a call from out of the blue about a job, you should really question how they found you, especially if you don't even remember applying. And then, of course, be cautious of anything that is requiring you, of course, to pay, but also provide your important personal details. Birth dates, social security numbers, driver's license numbers. There are times in the hiring process, once that job offer has already been given, where you might be asked for some of those details, but not at the beginning.
So I know there's a lot of people who deal with job scams when using our platform, Indeed. So I think it'd be a good time for us to give them some resources on how to report those scam jobs. So if you're wondering how to report scam jobs, we have 2 ways that you can do that. The first is using the report job button. So you're going to search for and navigate to the job that you would like to report. And then you're going to open the job description and scroll to the bottom of the job post. And then you'll select the report job button and fill out the form. The second way is using My Jobs. You go to My Jobs, locate the job you would like to report in your saved or applied job sections. If it's a saved job, report it by clicking on the job, scrolling to the bottom, and clicking the Report a Job button. If you've applied to the job, you can report it by clicking the 3 dots, and then you'll see the option to archive or report jobs. Then you can report the job and fill out your confidential response. Another thing that is pretty controversial for some people is overemployment. Have you ever considered being overemployed? I feel like you and I talk about this a lot, but let's talk about it for the viewers and the listeners at home.
I barely want to work one job.
Let's talk about it.
The people out there working multiple jobs, I'm like, good on you? How?
Question mark?
I know. I don't even know that if I had the time, I would want to work multiple jobs. And I love my job. That's coming from somebody who really loves what they do.
I love what I do. I don't want to do anything else because lazy girl. I just feel like I feel fulfilled in the one thing that I'm doing. And kudos to the people who are like, I want to do more. Like they want to covet the jobs.
People that are overemployed are really optimizing their productivity with their time.
We all have the same 24 hours and they're like, more.
For me, less.
So for those who don't know, what is overemployment and why is it so controversial right now?
Overemployment is really this concept of working 2 or more jobs in secret. So I think the secret piece is what really makes it controversial. You're not telling each employer about the other, right? The rise of remote work really kind of set up this climate where people could potentially work multiple jobs, right? Because if they are highly productive in their primary job, which in the overemployment space would be called J1, then they could essentially look for a J2, which would allow them to essentially just work 40 hours a week, but collect 2 paychecks. The goal really then becomes to maximize your compensation while minimizing the number of hours that you actually have to work. It's controversial because you're getting all that money, but you're only working 40 hours a week and you're not telling one employer about the other.
To kind of explain it to people who were confused, it's a little different than being employed and having a side hustle where maybe you're working after hours of your 40 hours. This is, I have 2 full-time jobs, or I'm working 2 jobs and I'm doing them at the same time, being a little hush-hush. And, I'm still getting to live my regular life, taking a meeting here and there.
Yeah, it's kind of like you're 2-timing your employer.
Ooh, you're cheating.
You're cheating.
Yeah.
You got your side bay.
Oh, side bay and main bay. But I think that's where it gets tricky. And that's why it's controversial, because you can't dedicate the time to 2 bays. That's why it's called cheating, because both bays can't get 100% of your time.
Can't do it.
We kind of talked about this, and that's what I'm leading into about the 2 bays. What are the pros and cons of being overemployed?
Sure. I mean, the pros are definitely the money, right? You're getting paid 2 salaries while essentially only working 1 week's worth of work at a time. That sounds great, but I gotta say, the cons do kind of outweigh the pros. I mean, one, there's so much secrecy involved. I mean, you got to be really careful about who you even talk to about it, because if you mention it to a coworker and they tell your boss, tell HR, if it's not in your contract where you can work multiple jobs, that could be grounds for termination. You even got to be careful about who you tell in your personal life, because you could be out at a work happy hour and somebody kind of spills the beans and inadvertently rats you out. And then that puts you in a weird space with your current employer, right? Secrecy is hard, makes you feel a little bit icky, definitely a con. You also have to be highly organized. You've got to make sure, especially if you're working the 2 jobs at the same time, you've got to be managing your schedule so that you're not double booking meetings, that you're completing both of the job responsibilities of, both of these roles, which can be really tiring too, right? And you just have to be really careful, because if you find 2 jobs in the same industry, your paths could cross with your coworkers in a really, unsuspecting way. And then again, that could kind of out you to the situation. And I think ultimately, if it's not in your employment contract that you can be doing these things, and if you're doing it in secret, you probably know that you shouldn't, you could potentially be terminated or even sued.
The cons outweigh the pros. We always say money talks. I get it, but it sounds like a temporary solution to something else. But to each their own. Everybody has their own journey. I won't ick somebody else's yum. Okay, so we've talked about a lot of things in this episode and a lot of controversies.
Mm-hmm.
What are your tips for protecting yourself in your job search?
So the best way that job seekers can protect themselves in a job search is really to be vigilant. Be wary of people that are reaching out to you when you don't remember applying, or if you're getting contacts from Gmail addresses instead of corporations. You really have to look at the information. And a common red flag is if it's too good to be true, it probably is.
As always, you give the best tips. I feel like this was a great episode. I always love talking to you, and I just wish we could sit here and talk all the time, but that's it.
That's it.
It's done. Thank you so much for watching this episode of Job Search Stories by Indeed. We have so much more content on the Indeed YouTube channel, so make sure to subscribe, and we'll see you next time.
Bye.
Bye. Kind of switching gears.
I mean, sometimes a simple internet search can really help you.
Let me see those thumbs. Ladies, thumbs.
You were perfect.
I'm perfect all the time.